When I turned 54, I thought my life was set in its ways, a monotonous rhythm of work, home, and the occasional book club meeting. I had a respectable job as an editor, a cozy townhouse filled with memories of raising 2 children now grown and scattered, and a cat named Hemingway who filled the silence. My days were predictable, almost scripted, until he walked into my life. It was a Thursday afternoon, one of those rare sunny days in Seattle when the air felt alive. I was at a quaint little cafe downtown, typing furiously on my laptop, editing a particularly tedious manuscript. That's when I noticed him. A young man, tall, lean, with a slightly disheveled mop of dark hair and a pair of piercing hazel eyes that seemed to see right through me. He couldn't have been older than 28. He ordered a black coffee and sat at a table diagonally across from mine. I didn't think much of it until he pulled out a notebook, scribbling furiously, occasionally glancing at me. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then our eyes met, and he smiled. "You're editing, aren't you?" he asked, his voice smooth yet curious. Surprised, I nodded. "How could you tell?" He chuckled. The furrowed brows, the occasional exasperated sighs. Classic editor behavior. I laughed despite myself. Guilty as charged. "And you? Writer?" He nodded, holding up his notebook. "Trying to be. Name's Ethan." I introduced myself, feeling oddly self-conscious. I didn't know what it was about him, but there was an energy, a magnetic pull, that made it hard to look away. Over the next hour, we exchanged casual conversation. He told me about his dream of becoming a novelist, his struggles with self-doubt, and his love for old jazz records. In return, I shared snippets of my life, careful to omit anything too personal. Yet despite my restraint, I found myself enjoying his company more than I'd anticipated. As I packed up to leave, he said, "I'd love to hear your thoughts on one of my stories sometime. Would you mind?" I hesitated. This was unusual, wasn't it? But there was an earnestness in his eyes that melted my apprehension. "Sure," I said, handing him my card. "Email it to me." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. It felt absurd. What was I doing, entertaining the attention of someone half my age? Yet there was a thrill in the unpredictability of it all. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I exchanged emails. He sent me his drafts, and I gave him detailed feedback. His writing was raw but brimming with potential. Our emails soon turned personal, discussing books, life philosophies, even childhood memories. Before I knew it, we had transitioned to late-night phone calls. One evening, after a particularly long conversation, he said, "You're unlike anyone I've ever met." I laughed nervously. "That's because I'm probably the oldest person you've ever talked to at length." "Stop that," he said firmly. "Age doesn't define you. You're sharp, funny, and kind. That's what matters." I didn't know how to respond. It had been years since someone had spoken to me with such unfiltered admiration. It scared me, but it also exhilarated me. The turning point came on a rainy Sunday. Ethan had invited me to a jazz bar. "A little gem you'll love," he'd said. I hesitated, but eventually agreed. The bar was dimly lit, with a cozy ambiance and the soulful hum of a live saxophonist. Over glasses of wine, we talked about everything and nothing. At one point, he leaned closer, his face inches from mine. "I know this might be crossing a line," he said, his voice low, "but I can't stop thinking about you." My breath caught. "Ethan, I know what you're going to say," he interrupted, "that it's ridiculous, that there's an age gap, that people will judge. But I don't care. I've never felt this way before." His confession left me reeling. Was I ready to embrace this? Could I? Word of our relationship eventually leaked. My friends were horrified. My children were livid. "What are you thinking, Mom?" my daughter Claire demanded. "He's young enough to be your son." "I didn't plan for this to happen," I said, my voice trembling. "But he makes me happy." The backlash was overwhelming. Even Ethan's friends questioned his choices. "Why her?" they asked. But Ethan stood by me, unwavering in his conviction. Over time, the noise subsided. Those who couldn't accept us drifted away, and those who cared stayed. Ethan's unwavering belief in us gave me the strength to embrace our relationship fully. Years later, as I sit here recounting our story, I realize how transformative it's been. Love doesn't follow rules or timelines. It finds you when you least expect it, challenging you to step outside your comfort zone and redefine what's possible. At 54, I never imagined my life would take this turn. But now, as I look at Ethan, the man who's become my partner, my confidant, and my greatest adventure, I know I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.